You can't mistake the sound. What you are hearing and seeing is a swarm of honeybees. How many? If you guess thousands, you are spot on. This is Boone, North Carolina. Tucked nicely in the Blue Ridge Mountains, Boone, the folks here will tell you, is a slice of paradise. And many of the locals have what you can call an up-close relationship with the honeybee.
I come down and talk to the bees, so...
And what do you say to them?
It's called telling of the bees, and you tell them if there's a divorce, if there's a marriage, if there's a new baby in the family, if it's a European thing.
And the bees are supposed, you're just kind of having a conversation with the bees?
You are having a conversation with the bees.
Yeah.
If you don't do it, legend is that you will lose your bees.
Debbie Strickland is a honeybee hobbyist, which means she's got a handful of hives she cares for, and the honey she gets is for personal use, friends, and to sell in small quantities. By the way, Debbie says, the bees don't talk back. Now this is the one you're going to put back in there.
We are going to put that one in there.
And this will even be more of an attraction to bees, right?
It will. It's clean. And then we're going to put our lure. There's a little bit of honey in there.
I know. I just was going to say, I smell a little honey.
Yep.
So
what we're going to taste it. Yep.
Pretty good honey.
Excellent honey. There you go. You hold that.
What you are looking at is a frame. It fits inside the beekeeper's hive, which is actually a box. Yep, the hive is a box. Each box generally holds 6 to 10 frames. Inside each frame is a sheet of plastic or wax embossed with thousands of hexagonal cells. Eventually, they will be filled with honey, then capped by the bees with a layer of wax. Now that we all know what we're looking at, it's time for me to suit up and hang out with Debbie as she checks the hives. Now, if I get stung, are they like other bees? They sting you once and that's it, or can they multiple sting you?
Just once.
It's just once, huh?
They can only sting you once, but they send out a pheromone that says
all the rest
others come.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. Thank you so much. You may not know this, I didn't. Honeybees are not native to the U.S. They were brought over a couple hundred years ago by Europeans to pollinate their crops. Debbie and I are surrounded by the bees as she removes the lid from the hive.
Open it up. So this is the inner cover we're taking off.
The smoke from the can keeps the bee colony fairly docile. Now it's my turn to lift out one of the frames. Like this?
Yep, trying to go, yep.
I don't want to ruin the comb.
Don't worry about it, they'll put it back. Pull it up, and you can see that there is honey in there. See the glistening?
Oh, wow, yeah. To produce the honey, it takes 45 days from the time the bees start working. By the way, the girl bees do all the work, gathering nectar and pollen. The colony's queen does all the egg laying for the next generation of bees. The male bees, called drones, have one job. You can guess what it is. Debbie checks another frame.
Look at that.
Oh, yeah.
This is honey. You can see it glistening. This is capped honey right here. All of this is capped honey.
What does that mean, capped honey?
It means that they've dehydrated it enough down to 17, probably around 17%, and they've capped it off to save it for later.
Conservationists say there are likely more honeybees on the planet now than ever. Between commercial honey companies and hobbyists like Debbie, there are an estimated 2.7 million honeybee colonies just in the U.S., and that's a lot of bees. Typically, what we're looking at here, how many bees are we looking at in this hive?
You are looking, you could, probably somewhere between 30, 50,000 bees.
30 to 50,000 bees just in this one box?
Yes. Yes, just in this one box.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
They are amazing.
A decade and a half ago, hive health was a major issue. The honeybee population was in decline. Pesticides, loss of habitat, and parasites were taking their toll, leading to what's called colony collapse.
I'm sure that a lot of beekeepers lost some of their, especially their smaller colonies.
Juliana Rangel is an entomologist, an insect scientist at Texas A&M University. Her expertise, bees.
So the population of Apis mellifera, the honeybee that we know, is actually doing a little better now than it did about 15 years ago. And I think it has a lot to do with all the research that has been done on the subject of the colony collapse disorder.
A full-court press was undertaken by scientists and beekeepers to better manage the colonies and protect the bees. It worked, but the urgency was as much about agriculture as it was honey. Because of their sheer numbers, honeybees are arguably the most prolific pollinators on the planet.
We're going to try this. Okay, now watch this. Now, you see how the girls are staying on this frame? Now, let's get them in the box, like that.
H.S. Green knows his way around bees and what needs to be done to protect them. The Boone beekeeper maintains 50 hives. Bees are absolutely invaluable to agriculture.
Yes. Without the vegetables and the fruits, they had to be, and the nuts, don't forget the nuts. Yeah. They has to be pollinated. They wouldn't produce. And the honeybee is the best pollinator in the world.
According to a United Nations report, the annual value of crops that are directly affected by pollinators is at least $235 billion and could be upwards of $500 billion. So, without pollinators, the bees, the variety of food available to us would be 1/3 less. But bees, not just honeybees, but all species are not out of the woods. Habitat loss, climate change, pesticides, and herbicides are all problematic. But the greatest threat to honeybees is a bug called the Varroa mite. It must live in a honeybee colony to survive. It feeds on bee larvae and transmits more than 24 viruses.
In a colony, you might have low levels of viruses like the deformed wing virus, for example. That's the most common one. But when you have a heavily parasitized colony with Varroa, you also have really high levels of the deformed wing virus.
And it's mandatory that we treat twice a year, because if you don't get on a schedule and treat at least twice a year and manage your mite load, there's the biggest thing that the hobbyists are facing, and the commercial guys.
So the mites, if the mites will ultimately lead to the destruction of the hive?
Oh yes, it'll be called a colony collapse, yes.
But scientists say it's a catch-22. Treating with a miticide is essential to protect the hive from disaster, but also has adverse effects on the bees.
But on the other hand, the chemicals are actually harming the bees. They're causing sublethal effects. They're not killing the bees right off the bat, but they're causing the queens and the drones, which are the males, to suffer from lower reproductive potential.
Keeping bees is far from easy. Rory McLemoyle and Stephanie Langston live just outside Boone. Beekeeping is fairly new to them. You must have said, this is a lot more work goes into this than I ever imagined.
Yeah, you can't just, put bees in a hive and leave them alone. It's a lot of work, and you have to be able to pay attention to them. You have to be able to see the signs that say, why they're doing good or when something's starting to go wrong. And if you don't know how to work them properly, then they're going to let you know. And so that first season, I got stung a lot.
I think we also learned the hard way. We thought that we would be able to test things out and just figure it out, and that it would be more intuitive than it was. And then we realized that we needed to build a community here by talking with other people.
Come on, Gertie, this way.
Jacqueline Staub is an evolutionary ecologist at Appalachian State University in Boone. She's teaching Gertie, her German short-haired pointer, how to sniff out bumblebee nests.
So what we do is we imprint them on bumblebee nesting material using clay. So we use bumblebee nesting material and we'll put it in a PVC pipe. and we'll play with them with that, and so they'll start to associate that nesting material with play and reward, and they're just like, woohoo, this is the best ever.
There is, Stobbs says, very little data on bumblebee nests. They are difficult to find. Unlike the honeybee, where colony size is enormous, up to 50,000, a bumblebee colony might be no more than 20 and never gets much higher than 1,500. What's the point? What are you trying to accomplish?
Right, so as we know, bumblebees are in decline worldwide. A lot of our pollinating species, honestly, entofauna in general is in decline worldwide. And so what we do is we find bumblebee nests, and we know that bumblebee nests are a limiting factor for bumblebees when it comes to bumblebee populations, because there's only a limited amount and all the different bees have to compete for them. So we find bumblebee nests and we learn about the different species-specific preferences.
Bumblebees are one of about 4,000 bee species native to the U.S. Others include carpenter bees and blue orchard bees. Many are in decline. Loss of habitat is a major factor. And 70% of those bees nest underground. They will quite literally fight it out for nest sites. Saving the bumblebee is important because they are worth annually $3 billion to the U.S. economy. That's because, Stobbs says, the specific way they pollinate that other bees don't.
They are capable of buzz pollination.
Buzz pollination.
Where they vibrate at a specific frequency to make a plant release its pollen. And that's the only way certain plants release their pollen.
H.S. Green believes the world's bees would be in much better shape if people had a better understanding of their value. At his Hidden Happiness Bee Farm, Green holds educational classes for adults.
If you feed them like raw honey, say maybe in the summer, how would you feed, how do you actually feed them?
And for kids.
How many wings did bee have? How many?
5. 4.
4. 2 on each side. Front wing, hind wing.
In the bee store, there's an observation hive. Bees doing what they do, making honey.
Now,
but this is where all the hard work pays off.
You have to do a solid motion to get it off.
The honey extraction room. Green skillfully cuts the wax cap off the frame, revealing pure raw honey. Then a little cleanup.
What's below the wood, we simply pick it like that. Now, I look at that and those girls have made this liquid gold for me. There's what it looks like uncapped.
And that is liquid gold.
That is liquid gold in the hexagon mold.
Liquid gold in the hexagon mold.
Yes.
I like that. The frames are then put in the extractor. It spins the honey out of the frames, and Green's liquid gold oozes out until it fills the bucket with 50 pounds of honey. Are you a bit curious how much honey came from one bee?
She, the honeybee, the female worker, only makes 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey in her life. 1/12.
One bee.
One bee.
Makes 1/12 of a teaspoon
Yes.
of honey.
Yes.
And that goes to show you how many thousands and thousands of bees you have to have, right?
Yes.
When you talk about the girls, you're talking about the bees.
Oh, I'm talking about my girls, the bees.
They're your girls.
They're my girls because they do all the work. I got high respect for it.